I didn't think much of it at the time. But looking back now, I should have known. The signs were all there, I just didn't want to see them. It wasn't until much later that I realized what was really going on behind the scenes. But that day, sitting at that family dinner, everything felt off. The air was thick with unspoken tension, but no one said anything out loud. It was one of those moments where you could feel the weight of something heavy in the room, but no one had the guts to acknowledge it. It was like a dark cloud that hovered, silent but looming. And that's when I caught it, the way my sister, Lisa, looked at me. She wasn't smiling. Her eyes were sharp, calculating even. Something about the way she glanced at me made the hairs on the back of my neck stand up. It wasn't like her. Or maybe it was. I couldn't decide. I remember thinking to myself, why does she look at me like that? It wasn't the first time I'd noticed her distant attitude, but it was the first time I felt it cut through me like a knife. But at the time, I brushed it off. I thought maybe I was overreacting. Maybe she was just having a bad day. But deep down, I knew that wasn't it. I just couldn't figure out what exactly was wrong. I sat there, half-heartedly pretending to follow the conversation, but every now and then, I'd catch a glimpse of her eyes on me, always watching, always calculating. It wasn't like her. We used to be close. Or at least, I thought we were. We'd laugh together, share stories, and even argue, but this was different. The rest of the family went about their usual business, chatting about the kids, the weather, the usual trivial stuff. But I couldn't shake the feeling that something bigger was brewing. Something I wasn't ready to face. I knew Lisa had always been a little more outspoken than the rest of the family, but I never imagined she'd turn on me like this. And that was the first crack in the facade. But it wasn't until much later that I understood the full picture. The thing about family is, you think you know them. You think you understand their motives, their triggers, their desires. But then something happens. Something subtle. Something you didn't see coming. And it shakes your entire world. That night, I had no idea how much things were about to change. How much my own family was about to turn against me. But in that moment, all I could think was, what the hell is going on here? Why was Lisa looking at me like that? And why was I the only one who seemed to notice it? The rest of the family? They were just talking, oblivious to the storm that was brewing in the background. But I knew something was coming. I just didn't know when. I didn't know how bad it would get. I thought I could handle it, but when it all came crashing down, I realized I had no idea what I was really up against. And I'll be honest, I didn't think it would happen the way it did. I never imagined that my own family, my sister, would be the one to break me. And I let her think I had nothing left. That was my mistake. I let them all think that. I could feel the tension building up every time I walked into that house. It wasn't something you could put your finger on right away, but there was a palpable change in the air. The way Lisa and Mom spoke to me, it wasn't like before. It was like I was a stranger in my own family. At first, I thought I was just imagining it, but after a few more awkward dinners, I knew something was off. I could sense it in the way Lisa would ask questions, subtle at first, but sharp once you paid attention. It wasn't out of genuine concern, it was like she was trying to dig into my life, looking for something to use against me. But I just played along, keeping my thoughts to myself. I wasn't one to rock the boat, especially with everything going on in my own head. Mom, on the other hand, had this look about her. She wasn't the warm, understanding mother I remembered. Instead, there was something cold about her gaze, like she was constantly analyzing me, judging me. It was in the little things, how she'd say, "Are you sure you're making the right decisions?" Or, "I hope you're not making the same mistakes again." I didn't even know how to respond to that. It felt like I was being pushed into a corner. Every time I spoke, it was as if my words didn't matter. Lisa would always interject, correcting me, or Mom would chime in, offering her unsolicited advice. I felt myself becoming more and more isolated. It was like I was suffocating under the weight of their expectations. The worst part was, they didn't even know they were doing it. Or maybe they did, but I wasn't ready to face that reality yet. The strain was subtle at first. I couldn't really pinpoint what was causing it, but I knew something wasn't right. One evening, after dinner, Lisa and Mom were having one of their usual conversations about family business. It wasn't anything out of the ordinary. They were discussing the family finances, the bills, the house, nothing that hadn't been discussed 100 times before. But this time, something about it felt different. The way Lisa kept glancing at me, her eyes narrowing ever so slightly, it was like she was trying to catch me in a lie. Or maybe she was just trying to make sure I wasn't planning something she didn't approve of. I couldn't shake the feeling that I was being watched, not out of care, but out of suspicion. And then there was Mom, sitting quietly, not saying much, but every now and then she'd add something that felt like a jab. "Well, you know your father would never approve of that," she said, her voice laced with that judgmental tone she always used when she wanted to make a point. It was like they were setting the stage for something, and I wasn't invited to the script. I had enough of it. But I didn't speak up. Instead, I just nodded, forcing a smile, pretending like I didn't notice the tension growing. I wasn't ready to confront them, not yet. But deep down, I felt it in my gut, something was about to happen. I didn't know what, but I could feel the storm brewing. And the more I tried to ignore it, the worse it got. Days turned into weeks, and every family gathering felt more and more uncomfortable. One afternoon, when I was helping Mom with some things in the kitchen, she casually mentioned, "I think it's time we talk about the future. About the house, the will, we need to figure things out, don't you think?" The way she said it sent a chill down my spine. I didn't know exactly what she meant, but I had a sinking feeling it wasn't going to be a conversation I'd enjoy. I tried to brush it off, but the seed had been planted. That night, as I sat on the porch, I couldn't help but think about everything that had been said and done. I realized something: I hadn't truly been a part of the family for a long time. Sure, I was still there, physically, but emotionally, I was an outsider. They had all their plans, their expectations, and I was just there, waiting for them to tell me what I could and couldn't do. But I wasn't ready to accept that yet. I couldn't. Not without a fight. The next day, as I walked into the house, I saw Lisa standing by the window, looking out, as if waiting for something. I tried to ignore her, but she turned around and met my eyes. For a moment, we just stared at each other, no words exchanged. But in that moment, I knew something was coming. I just didn't know what. I didn't know how deep the divide had grown between us, but it was real. It was happening. And I was caught in the middle. As much as I tried to distance myself from the situation, I couldn't. The family was pulling me back in, and whether I liked it or not, I had to face what was coming. I couldn't keep pretending that everything was fine. And that's when it hit me. The control they had over me wasn't just about the little things. It wasn't just about finances or decisions I made. It was about something deeper. Something more personal. They were trying to reshape me, reshape who I was, and I couldn't let that happen. Not anymore. But how was I supposed to fight back? How could I stand up to my family when they held all the cards? That night, as I lay in bed, I realized I had no choice. I had to play the game. I had to let them think I was weak, let them believe I had nothing left. Because that's when I would have the upper hand. I would let them believe they had me cornered, and when the time was right, I would show them just how wrong they were. I thought I could handle it, but every day, it was getting harder to ignore the pressure. Lisa's behavior had changed. It wasn't just the little things anymore, the casual comments, the subtle digs. It was more deliberate now. I could feel her eyes on me, like she was waiting for me to mess up, to give her something she could use. It felt like I was under constant surveillance, but I couldn't figure out why. It wasn't until that morning that the pressure really hit me. I was at the kitchen table, sipping my coffee, trying to get my thoughts together for the day. Mom walked in, her face unreadable, as usual. But there was something different in the air that morning. She had this sharp, almost accusatory tone when she said, "Have you thought about what you're going to do with your life, John? You can't keep going on like this." I put my mug down, my hands suddenly feeling cold. The words stung more than they should have, but I didn't say anything. I just stared at her, trying to keep my cool. It wasn't the first time she'd said something like this, but this time, it felt like a challenge. Like she was waiting for me to react, waiting for me to show that I was just as defeated as they thought I was. I didn't know how to respond. I could have told her that I was doing just fine, that I didn't need her constant reminders. But I didn't. Instead, I just nodded and muttered something about handling things on my own. The tension in the room was suffocating. I could feel her eyes on me, her expectation hanging in the air. It wasn't just about the things she said, it was the way she said them. It was like she didn't see me as the person I was anymore. To her, I was a failure, someone who couldn't get his life together. And that was when I realized how deep the control had gone. I had always thought I was in charge of my own life. But now, with every word, every glance, it felt like they were trying to rewrite my story, to decide who I was for me. I didn't want to give them that power. But it was hard not to, when they were so relentless. That afternoon, things took another turn. Lisa cornered me in the living room while Mom was out. She started asking me about my finances, things I hadn't even shared with her. "You're not planning on running into trouble again, are you?" she asked, her voice dripping with false concern. I could tell she wasn't really worried about me. She just wanted to see if she could get me to crack. But I wasn't ready to let her win. I shrugged it off, telling her everything was fine, that I had everything under control. I hated the way she was looking at me, like she knew something I didn't. The way she stood there, with her arms crossed, that smug smile on her face, it was like she was daring me to challenge her, to prove her wrong. But I couldn't. I didn't have the energy to fight her on this, not right then. And that's when I made a decision. I was going to let them think I had nothing left. I would let them believe that I was weak, that I was just another failure in their eyes. I would play along, just for a little while longer. It wasn't that I didn't care. I cared too much. But if they were going to underestimate me, then let them. I would show them when the time was right. I had to bide my time. I had to wait for the perfect moment. But as the days went by, I realized something else. This wasn't just about me anymore. This was about them. About what they thought of me, about how they saw me. And no matter how much I pretended to ignore it, the truth was always there. I could feel it, gnawing at me. They were manipulating me, trying to make me play their game. But they didn't realize I wasn't playing by their rules. Not anymore. I wasn't the man they thought I was. They thought I had nothing left, but they were wrong. I wasn't going to let them dictate my future, not like this. It wasn't until that night, at yet another family dinner, that everything came to a head. I had been quiet, observing, watching as the conversations flowed around me. It was the same old stuff, talk about the kids, talk about work, talk about everything but the things that really mattered. But then, out of nowhere, Lisa dropped a bombshell. "John," she said, looking at me with that cold, calculating stare, "Mom's been talking to a lawyer about the inheritance. She thinks it's time we figure out who gets what." The room went silent. Everyone turned to look at me, their eyes piercing through me, waiting for me to react. My heart skipped a beat. I didn't know what to say. I couldn't believe she had brought this up, not in front of everyone. But I kept my face neutral, pretending like it didn't faze me. "I'm not worried about it," I said, trying to sound casual. But I knew it was a lie. I was worried. I was more than worried. This wasn't just about money. It was about control. It was about them taking away my freedom, my independence, piece by piece. And they were doing it right in front of me, as if I had no say in it. But I wasn't going to give in. Not yet. I wasn't ready to give them the satisfaction. I wasn't ready to show them that I was just another pawn in their game. No. I was going to wait. I was going to let them think they had won. But deep down, I knew the truth. They had no idea who they were dealing with. And when the time came, I would show them just how wrong they were. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. Lisa had just dropped the inheritance bombshell, and the entire room fell into an uncomfortable silence. Everyone's eyes were on me, as if waiting for me to crack, to show how badly this was affecting me. But I couldn't let them see that. I couldn't give them the satisfaction of knowing how much it hurt. It was one thing to manipulate me behind closed doors, but to do it publicly? That was a whole new level. I looked around the room, trying to keep my emotions in check. Mom had that look on her face, the one she always had when she was about to start her little speeches about responsibility and family values. But I wasn't interested in hearing it. Not now. Not after everything that had happened. It was clear to me now that the real reason they were doing this wasn't about inheritance at all. It wasn't about money. It was about control. They had been trying to control me for months now, pushing me, cornering me, testing how far they could go before I snapped. And I let them. I let them believe I was too weak to fight back, too tired to stand up for myself. I let them think they had won, but I hadn't given up. Not yet. As the silence stretched on, I felt the weight of everyone's expectations hanging over me. I could feel their judgment. I could feel them waiting for me to fold, to admit that I was in over my head. But I wasn't going to give them that. I wasn't going to let them see how much this hurt. Instead, I stood up, slowly, deliberately, making sure I didn't give away any hint of my frustration. I'm not concerned about the inheritance, I said, my voice calm, controlled. What I'm more concerned about is how you all seem to think I can't handle things on my own. How you've all decided that I'm incapable of making my own decisions. Lisa looked at me, her eyes narrowing. She wasn't expecting this. She was expecting me to apologize, to back down, to beg for their approval. But I wasn't going to do that. Not anymore. John, we're just trying to help, Mom said, her voice tight. We've seen how things have been going with you. You can't keep pushing everyone away. I could feel my blood boiling, but I kept my cool. They didn't get it. They didn't understand what it was like to be constantly judged, constantly underestimated. They didn't understand the weight of their expectations crushing me from all sides. I don't need help, I said, my voice firm. I just need you to stop treating me like I'm a child. Like I'm incapable of making my own decisions. The room was still. No one said anything. I could see the shock on their faces, the realization that I wasn't going to back down this time. Lisa's smug expression faltered for just a second, and that's when I knew I had them. I had finally started to turn the tables. But it wasn't enough. Not yet. I had to show them I wasn't the same person they thought I was. I wasn't the weak, helpless guy they kept trying to push around. I was done playing their game. I walked out of the room, my mind racing. I couldn't believe what had just happened. I had stood up to them, to all of them, and for the first time in a long time, I felt like I had control over my own life again. But it wasn't over. Not by a long shot. They hadn't given up yet. I knew that. I could feel it. And as much as I wanted to think this was a turning point, I knew there was still more to come. More games to play. More lies to unravel. But I wasn't afraid anymore. I had a plan. And I was going to make them pay for underestimating me. For thinking they could control me, manipulate me, make me believe I had nothing left. They thought they had won, but I hadn't even started yet. I could feel it in my bones, the weight of everything building up, the sense that something was slipping away. But it wasn't until that afternoon, when I found that small detail, that I started to see things more clearly. It was so subtle, so insignificant on the surface, but in that moment, I knew it meant something. I had been in the attic, rummaging through some old boxes, trying to distract myself from the mess my family had created. I didn't expect to find anything of importance, just old family photos, dusty letters, and forgotten knickknacks. But then, buried beneath a stack of old magazines, I found it, an envelope. It was plain, unmarked, with no indication of what was inside. But something about it made my stomach tighten. It was too out of place. Too deliberate. I opened it cautiously, my heart pounding in my chest. Inside was a letter, one that I wasn't supposed to see. It was from Mom's lawyer. And it was about the will. The very thing we had just discussed at dinner. The thing Lisa had brought up so casually, almost as if she had no idea what was at stake. But this letter, this piece of paper, changed everything. It wasn't a full will. No, it was just a draft. But it was clear enough to see where things were headed. The will was being altered, and I was being pushed aside. All those years of hard work, all the sacrifices I'd made, and I was being written out. It wasn't just a financial hit, it was a personal one. They weren't just taking my share of the inheritance. They were taking away my place in this family. And that's when I knew I had to act. I couldn't let them do this to me, to my life. They thought they had me where they wanted me. They thought I was broken, that I couldn't handle it. But I wasn't going to let them erase me without a fight. I had the letter, but it wasn't enough. Not yet. I needed more. I needed to know everything. I spent the next few days going through every detail, every paper, every conversation I could remember. And that's when it hit me. Lisa wasn't just manipulating me, she was manipulating the entire family. She had been feeding them lies, twisting the truth, making sure everyone thought I was the problem. I wasn't the one who was failing. They were the ones trying to control me, trying to take everything I had worked for. But they didn't know what I knew. They didn't know what I was capable of. I spent hours poring over documents, checking records, and finally, I found it, something that connected the dots. The family business had been set up in such a way that they could control the flow of money, control the decisions, and keep everything within their grasp. It was never about the inheritance. It was about power. It was about control. And I had been too blind to see it. But now I saw everything. I had the evidence. I had the truth. And I was going to use it. The family thought I was weak. They thought I had nothing left. But I was about to turn the tables on them. I wasn't going to let them push me around anymore. I wasn't going to be the one who sat quietly in the background while they made all the decisions. This time, I was going to fight back. I wasn't going to do it in the way they expected, though. I wasn't going to yell, I wasn't going to make a scene. I was going to be strategic. I was going to play the game on my terms. And I wasn't going to let them see me coming. It wasn't just about the money, or the house, or the inheritance. It was about showing them that they couldn't control me. That they couldn't take away my life without consequences. That night, I sat down with the letter in front of me, thinking about everything I had learned. The plan was taking shape in my mind, and I knew exactly what I needed to do next. I had to make sure they understood who was in control. I had to show them that I wasn't the person they thought I was. But most importantly, I had to let them believe I was defeated, that I had nothing left to fight for. Because once they thought that, once they were sure of it, I would have the upper hand. I would be the one in control, not them. And that's when the real game would begin. I knew things were about to escalate. I could feel the tension building in my chest, each moment pushing me closer to the inevitable confrontation. Lisa and Mom had no idea what was coming, and I wasn't sure if they ever would. But the more I thought about it, the more I realized something. I wasn't just fighting for control anymore. This was about something deeper. Something that I couldn't ignore any longer. The pressure they had been putting on me, the manipulation, the constant undermining, it wasn't just a family squabble. It was their way of trying to erase me. And I wasn't going to let them. That afternoon, I got a call from my lawyer. It was a routine check-in, something that had become more frequent as things with my family got worse. But this time, the conversation felt different. My lawyer had come across something strange in the paperwork. Something I hadn't seen before. It was another document, buried beneath the legal jargon, but this one was different. It wasn't part of the will, but it had an impact. It was a power of attorney agreement, signed by my mom, giving Lisa control over family decisions if anything were to happen to her. It was like a slap in the face. They were trying to cut me out without even telling me. The more I looked at it, the clearer it became. Lisa had been planning this for a while. She wasn't just playing games anymore. She was setting herself up as the one in charge, and she was doing it at my expense. I could feel the anger rising, but I knew this was not the time to lose control. I had to stay calm, calculated. I had to let them think I was still playing along. But deep down, I was already making my move. The next day, at family dinner, I could feel the change in the air. There was something different about the way they were looking at me. It was as if they knew I knew something, but they couldn't figure out what it was. I was quiet, watching them carefully, letting them think I was defeated. Lisa, as usual, was the first to speak. She made some offhand comment about how things needed to change in the family, about how someone needed to step up. I could see the way Mom nodded, agreeing with her. But I didn't respond. I just sat there, letting the silence fill the space. I wasn't ready to let them know that I had already uncovered their plan. Not yet. I let the conversation drag on, allowing them to talk, allowing them to think I wasn't paying attention. But the wheels were already turning in my head. I knew what I had to do next. After dinner, as everyone was cleaning up, I slipped out of the house unnoticed. I had a meeting scheduled with my lawyer. It was time to put my plan into motion. When I arrived at his office, I laid out everything I had, copies of the documents, the power of attorney agreement, the emails I had uncovered that showed Lisa and Mom had been planning behind my back. My lawyer's eyes widened as he looked through the papers, his expression shifting from concern to something else, something more determined. "You've got them," he said, his voice low. "This is exactly what we need." I felt a sense of relief wash over me. For the first time in a long time, I felt like I was in control again. But I couldn't let my guard down. Not yet. I had to be patient. I had to wait for the right moment. The next few days were a blur. I kept my distance from the family, letting them believe I was still defeated, still going along with their plan. But I was watching. Every conversation, every glance, every move they made, I was watching it all. I had to make sure that when the time came, I would have everything I needed to take them down. And that time was getting closer. I could feel it. One evening, as I was sitting alone in my living room, I got another call from my lawyer. This time, the news was even bigger. "We're ready," he said. "The documents are set, and we've got everything in place. It's time." My heart raced as I realized what this meant. The moment I had been waiting for was finally here. I was going to take control of the situation. I was going to show them that they couldn't push me around anymore. I wasn't going to be the one who sat quietly in the corner while they made all the decisions. I was going to make them pay for thinking I had nothing left. The next day, I set my plan in motion. I called a family meeting, one that everyone had to attend. It was time to lay it all out on the table. I wasn't going to let them continue to manipulate me. I wasn't going to let them get away with it. They had underestimated me, but that was about to change. When everyone gathered around the table, I could see the nervous energy in their eyes. They had no idea what was coming. I stood up slowly, looking around at all of them. Lisa, Mom, and even the rest of the family, they were all there, all waiting for me to speak. But I didn't say anything right away. I just let the silence hang in the air, letting them feel the weight of what was about to happen. Then, I pulled out the documents. The power of attorney agreement. The emails. Everything. I placed them on the table in front of them. "You've been playing games for too long," I said, my voice steady. "But I'm done playing by your rules." The room went dead silent. You could see the shock on their faces, the realization that everything they had worked for was crumbling right in front of them. It was like a slow-motion crash, one that they couldn't stop. I watched their expressions change, one by one. Lisa's smug smile faded. Mom's face turned pale. They had no idea how badly they had underestimated me. And as I stood there, watching them come to terms with what had just happened, I realized something. I wasn't just getting back at them. I was taking back my life. Finally. I stood there, watching their faces change as they processed what I had just laid out before them. The room was heavy with silence, and for the first time in what felt like forever, I felt the weight of control shift. It wasn't the look of surprise on their faces that made the moment so powerful, it was the realization that they had been so certain of their victory, so convinced that I was done for. But now, with just a few simple documents, I had thrown their plans into disarray. It wasn't just about the inheritance anymore. It wasn't about the power play they had been so carefully constructing behind my back. This was about me reclaiming my place, my power, my identity within this family. And seeing them finally understand that they were not the ones holding all the cards felt like a weight lifting off my chest. I didn't react immediately. I let them sit in it. Lisa was the first to speak, though I could tell she wasn't quite sure how to handle the situation. "What is this, John?" she asked, her voice far less confident than before. She glanced at Mom, but even she could see that the situation had taken a turn. I could see her try to cover up her discomfort, but there was no hiding it. "What do you think it is, Lisa?" I replied coolly, my voice steady, unwavering. "You've been playing the game, thinking I wouldn't catch on. But I have. And now it's time for you to face the consequences." There was a brief moment of tension, a split second where I saw the truth dawn on their faces. The way they realized that they had underestimated me in the worst possible way. And then it all clicked into place. Lisa's posture stiffened, her usual smugness replaced by a flicker of doubt. Mom, on the other hand, tried to maintain her composure, but the cracks were starting to show. She was no longer the authoritative figure who had always held the power. Now, she was just another player in a game she thought she had already won. "John," she said, her voice wavering, "this isn't necessary. You don't have to do this." I could see the desperation in her eyes, the way she tried to appeal to my sense of family, as if I could be swayed by her words. But it was too late for that. They had pushed me too far. "It's a little too late for that, don't you think?" I responded. "You made your decisions, and now I'm making mine." I wasn't angry, not anymore. But I was calm, composed, and I could feel the power in that control. They had spent so long trying to break me down, trying to manipulate me into submission. And now I was the one with the upper hand. The tension in the room was palpable, each of them trying to come to terms with what had just happened. I could see the wheels turning in Lisa's mind. She was trying to figure out her next move, trying to make sense of how I had gotten ahead of her. She hadn't expected this. Neither had Mom. I could see her shift uncomfortably, her mind racing to find an escape route, a way out of this mess. But there was no escape. They had created their own trap, and now they were stuck in it. "John," Mom said, her tone softer now, almost pleading. "We didn't mean to hurt you. We were just trying to make sure you were okay, that you wouldn't make the same mistakes again." I could hear the regret in her voice, but it wasn't enough. It was too late for apologies. I don't need you to protect me, Mom, I replied, my voice steady but firm. What I need is for you to treat me like an adult, like I'm capable of making my own decisions. There was a long pause, the kind of silence that settles heavily between people when the truth has been exposed. I could feel the weight of everything that had been said, all the tension that had built up over the years, finally breaking through. It was a turning point, a moment where I could finally breathe again. You think you know what's best for me, I continued, but you don't. You've been making decisions for me, telling me what I should do, what I shouldn't do, and you thought I wouldn't fight back. But I'm done letting you call the shots. The room seemed to shrink around me as I spoke, the walls closing in on them. I could feel the shift in the energy, the moment they realized that I wasn't just going to let this slide. They had been waiting for me to break, waiting for me to fold under the pressure. But I wasn't going to give them that satisfaction. I'm taking control now, I said, my voice cold, deliberate. And there's nothing you can do to stop me. Lisa opened her mouth, as if to argue, but no words came out. She was stunned, caught off guard by the resolve in my voice. Mom didn't say anything either, her face pale as she realized the gravity of what was happening. This was no longer a negotiation. This was a reckoning. I could see the shift in them, the way their confidence wavered. They had thought they could control me, that they could manipulate me into doing what they wanted. But they were wrong. I had learned from their games. I had seen their manipulations for what they were, and now I was ready to take back what was rightfully mine. The power had shifted, and there was no going back. I wasn't the same person I had been before. I wasn't going to let them dictate my life any longer. And for the first time in a long time, I felt free. Free from their expectations, free from their control, free to live my life the way I saw fit. I had taken back my power, and there was nothing they could do about it. The moment had arrived. The truth was finally out in the open, and I could see the shock in their eyes. The weight of everything that had been brewing for so long, the lies, the manipulation, the quiet power struggle, was crashing down on us all. Lisa and Mom were standing there, their faces pale, their confidence completely shattered. It wasn't just that I had the upper hand, it was that I had exposed everything they had been hiding. For the first time, they were forced to confront the consequences of their actions, and it was clear that they had no idea how to respond. I watched them carefully, letting the silence stretch, knowing that the longer I held my ground, the more they would unravel. Lisa opened her mouth, as if she were about to say something, but no words came out. She looked at Mom, searching for some sort of support, but even Mom was too stunned to speak. She had always been the one who held the power, the one who made the decisions, but now she was nothing more than a bystander in this fight. I had taken the reins, and I wasn't going to let go. You thought you had everything under control, I said, my voice steady, but you didn't. You thought I was weak, that I wouldn't fight back. But I'm not weak. And I'm done letting you control my life. The words were like a weight lifting off my shoulders, each one a release of all the frustration, the years of silence, the years of submission. I had spent so much time being their puppet, playing along with their rules, but not anymore. This was my moment, and I wasn't going to waste it. I could feel the shift in the room, the way their energy started to change, the way they realized they were losing control. The look on Lisa's face was one of disbelief, her eyes wide as she processed everything I had just said. But even she couldn't deny the truth. I had the documents, the proof, the plan. I had everything I needed to take back my life. Mom's face softened, just a little, but it wasn't enough. The regret I saw in her eyes wasn't going to change anything. I had spent so many years trying to please her, trying to live up to her expectations, but now I knew that no matter how much I tried, it would never be enough. John, please, Mom said, her voice barely above a whisper. We didn't mean for it to go this far. We just wanted to help. We were worried about you. I could hear the desperation in her voice, but I wasn't buying it anymore. Help? I echoed, my voice rising just enough to show the frustration I had been holding back. This wasn't about helping me. This was about controlling me. This was about making sure I stayed small so you could feel powerful. But that stops now. Lisa shifted uncomfortably, and I could tell she was trying to figure out her next move. But she wasn't in control anymore. She had lost her power, and she knew it. You think this changes anything? She finally said, her voice thick with anger. You think you've won? You're still the same person you were before. You still don't know how to handle things. This isn't over. I felt a surge of emotion at her words, but it wasn't anger. It was something more powerful, clarity. I knew she was still trying to manipulate me, still trying to get under my skin, but it wasn't working anymore. I had already won. You're wrong, I said calmly. This isn't about me. It's about you. You thought you could control me, control everything. But the truth is, you can't. And you never could. The words hung in the air, and I saw Lisa's face change again. The bravado she had been holding on to crumbled, replaced with a flicker of doubt. For the first time, I saw a crack in her armor, a glimpse of vulnerability that she had never shown before. It felt good. In that moment, I knew I had broken through. But I wasn't finished. Not yet. This isn't just about the inheritance, is it? I said, my voice steady but sharp. This is about control. About who gets to make the decisions. About who gets to dictate how everything works. And you've been trying to make me invisible, trying to push me out of my own life. There was a long pause, and I could see the weight of my words sinking in. They didn't have any more excuses. They couldn't deny the truth anymore. Lisa looked away, her jaw clenched. Mom's face was unreadable, but I knew she was processing everything I had just said. For the first time in a long time, I felt like I had their full attention. And that was a power I wasn't willing to give up. You can't keep me in the dark, I continued. You can't keep me on the sidelines while you make all the decisions. This is my life. And I'm taking it back. I stood up, looking at each of them in turn, making sure they saw the determination in my eyes. I'm not going to be your scapegoat anymore. I'm not going to be the person you think you can control. This is the last time you'll ever underestimate me. I turned and walked out of the room, feeling the weight of the moment settle in. It wasn't over yet, but it was the beginning of the end. I had taken back my power, and I wasn't going to let anyone take it from me again. It wasn't until the days that followed that I began to truly understand the magnitude of what had just happened. The truth had been laid bare, and nothing would ever be the same again. For the first time in my life, I wasn't the one on the defensive. I wasn't the one who had to sit quietly, waiting for approval, for permission to exist in the way I wanted. No, this time I had taken control, and I could feel the shift in the air, the tension hanging in every conversation, every interaction. They were watching me now, trying to figure out my next move, but they didn't understand. They still thought they were in charge. Lisa had been quieter than usual, her bravado replaced by a cold silence. She was smart, I knew that. But she had underestimated me, just like everyone else had. I wasn't going to let her get away with thinking she could keep me in the shadows. As for Mom, she was different. There was a sadness in her eyes, a regret that hadn't been there before. She didn't know how to face me now, not with the truth out in the open. And I knew, deep down, that she was struggling with something else, guilt. For all her control, for all the years she had pushed me, she knew now that she had lost me. That realization hit her hard, harder than any confrontation could. She had always been the one to hold the reins, the one to dictate what was best for everyone, but now, she was just another part of the problem. And for the first time, I wasn't going to carry the weight of her mistakes. The power had shifted, but the aftermath wasn't something anyone could prepare for. Family gatherings became awkward, tense affairs. We all sat around the table, but the space between us felt wider than ever. The once easy conversations now had an edge to them, as if everyone was walking on eggshells, afraid of saying the wrong thing. Lisa would cast occasional glances in my direction, but she wouldn't speak. Mom would try to act as if everything were normal, but I could see the cracks in her mask. We were all different now. And I realized then, as I watched them, that things would never go back to the way they were. It wasn't just the inheritance. It wasn't just the power struggle. It was something deeper, something that couldn't be fixed by a simple apology or a change of heart. The damage had been done. But I was okay with that. For the first time, I was free from their control, free from the weight of their expectations. I had reclaimed my life. The hardest part wasn't exposing their lies or taking back what was mine, it was coming to terms with the truth that I had to do it alone. That's what hurt the most. But in the end, it was the only way. I knew I had made the right choice. Slowly, over the next few weeks, the truth continued to settle in. The family dynamics began to shift, as people started to realize what had happened and how their actions had affected everything. Lisa, despite her bravado, began to back off. She still tried to assert control in small ways, but she no longer had the power she once did. Mom, on the other hand, started to make amends in her own way, though it was clear she was still processing everything. There were no grand apologies, no dramatic confessions, but there didn't need to be. I had already gotten what I needed, the truth. The emotional clarity. And that was enough. I didn't need their approval anymore. I didn't need them to tell me I was doing the right thing. I already knew. The family was never going to be the same, but maybe that was okay. Maybe this was the change we all needed. It wasn't easy, and there were still moments where the old patterns tried to creep back in, but I stood firm. I wasn't going to let them pull me back into the role they had created for me. I was my own person, and I wasn't going to let anyone tell me who I was anymore. In the end, the biggest lesson I learned was that I was the one in control of my life. Not them. Not anyone else. Me. And that truth, that freedom, was worth every sacrifice, every struggle. The aftermath may have been difficult, but the resolution was simple. I had taken back my power. And no one could ever take that from me again.